Great guest joining us today, and I'm glad you're listening to us on radio, on stream, on podcast, and watching us on Twitter's Periscope, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live. Hey there, hi there. I won't say ho there. I'm Leslie Marshall. First up in the hour, somebody we haven't had on in a while. I adore him. Ian Millhiser is senior correspondent at Vox. Love Vox. I know when I get stuff from them, I don't have to fact check it. He focuses on the Supreme Court there, the Constitution, and the decline of liberal democracy in the United States. He's also author of Injustices, the Supreme Court's history of comforting the comfortable and afflicting the afflicted. He previously clerked for Judge Eric L. Clay of the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, and he served as a Teach for America Corps member in the Mississippi Delta. Ian's handle on Twitter is @IMillhiser. That's IMILLHISER. More than a pleasure to have Ian back in the house. Thank you for rejoining us. It's been far too long. Good to have you with us and be able to see you as well as to hear you. Thank you for joining.
It has been way too long. No, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, definitely. Well, let's jump in to the Supreme Court and obviously, Amy Coney Barrett hearings. We had a lot of kumbaya moments at the end, right? Senator Cory Booker talking about the shared love of veganism by him and Senator Ted Cruz without masks. Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Dianne Feinstein, who I thought my party was going to hang from the highest rafter yesterday, hugging it out. I, as an American, was glad to see civility and decorum, but were these hearings a failure, Ian? And I ask because, one, Senator Booker's right. The goose is cooked. I mean, they had the votes, but I think it was important for Democrats to ask questions and let the American people see what they're getting, or maybe not see what they're getting, because she really didn't answer anything. But I really did want to throw up in my mouth a little when the Republicans were asking things like, who does the laundry at your house? And I'm screaming at the radio in my car because I wasn't home at that time. I'm screaming at the radio in my car going, her housekeeper, know, which I'm sure she wouldn't answer in that manner because they would think she's elitist and certainly showing white privilege. So were the hearings a failure in your professional opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Supreme Court hearing as a whole is a failure. Like, nominees have gotten better and better and better at sucking all the information out of the room whenever they're up for these confirmation hearings. And she was particularly good at sucking all the information out of that room. Now, that said, there just isn't a bunch of mystery there. So, like, one thing that we see time and time again when there's a Republican nominee is Democrats try to trick the nominee into saying, I will overrule Roe v. Wade, and the nominee is never tricked into saying that they will overrule Roe v. Wade. But this is a nominee who signed a statement pledging to oppose abortion rights. She has described, she signed another statement describing Roe v. Wade as an infamous. So, like, it's not like there's a mystery to be solved here regarding how she feels about Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of talk about how she'd approach Obamacare, but she wrote a book review about 3 years ago where she criticized both of the previous Supreme Court decisions upholding most of the Affordable Care Act. So, again, like, she wasn't tricked into revealing her views at the hearing, but so what? Like, she's already expressed those views elsewhere. We know that they are very, very conservative.
I didn't understand why nobody tried to tie being pro-life to the lives of those pictures of people that we saw paraded by the Democrats, of those lives of people suffering. That, as a woman who is pro-choice, and my cousin and I always talk about how people don't understand, pro-choice doesn't mean pro-abortion. Pro-choice means it's your choice what to do with your body. You want to wear colored contacts that make you look like an alien, your choice. You want to have breast implants, and I kid you not, I saw a woman the other day, I don't know how she didn't fall down. They were like out to here. Her prerogative, not something I would choose, wouldn't choose necessarily an abortion for myself. Not my body, not my choice. You want to get a vasectomy, you want to get hair plugs, not my choice. Now, obviously, hair plugs are not the same as, discussing, when life begins and, trimesters of birth. But what bothers me, and I don't think Democrats harped enough on, are for people that claim to be pro-life, and she does, where that doesn't follow through when it comes to things like social programs to feed or provide health care for people who do have their children, education for those children who are born, and maybe you're not born into an advantaged home financially, any kind of a work program, and then, of course, the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Because, look, are people on the Affordable Care Act, if they get kicked off, able to find another plan? We don't know, because we don't know what the Republican plan is. We don't know what the replace would be if repealed. But we do know that people who are very sick with pre-existing conditions would have a very difficult time in the private sector obtaining, health care. Isn't their life valuable? I mean, I know they can't ask her this, or I guess they could. Are you pro-fetus? Are you pro-life? Because if you're pro-life, that doesn't carry through with capital punishment. It certainly doesn't seem to carry through with healthcare or other social issues. Immigration would be an issue where pro-life carries through, and I would have preferred to see some tougher questioning from Democrats on that. Did the Democrats disappoint you? Because people yesterday were saying, I wish Democrats would fight. And people
Yeah.
really were angry about Senator Feinstein's hug. I don't think the hug means she didn't fight. Then again, her fighting and attacking religion of Amy Coney Barrett in 2017 and the attack style of Brett Kavanaugh with Democrats didn't get us the Senate, us being the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some moments where I think that, Feinstein, but other Democrats did not play this well. There were moments when they praised Lindsey Graham for conducting a, very well-run hearing. And I guess within like the limited context of the hearing itself, I mean, like it was run in a fair way, but, you know, 4 years ago, we were told that it was completely inappropriate for Merrick Garland, Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court, to even get a hearing when we were 8 months from an election, and now we're less than 3 weeks from an election. So I don't think that Democrats played this, as played their hand as well as they could have. Now that said, I think what's probably going on here is this. Democrats are winning this election right now, at least if you believe the polls, and they're winning by a lot.
But we
I
don't
mean,
want people to know that, Ian.
yeah, of course, of course. But like the polls right now show Biden 10 or 11 points up. And so the status quo, if you're like just thinking about the election, the status quo for Democrats are pretty good. And so they could have gone in there with a great big strategy to bruise up this nominee and make Republicans look really bad for it. And, maybe that would work. But maybe it wouldn't. Like, I mean, when the status quo is this good for Democrats,
Don't rock the boat.
yeah, I understand why they don't want to rock the boat.
Speaking of, abortion is a very emotionally charged issue. There are one issue voters on both sides of this issue that will go out to vote based on being pro-life and her possibly, most likely, being seated, and those being pro-choice and anger about the seating. There are obviously opinions on both sides as to who her on the court benefits, and I'm not talking about benefits regarding future decisions from the highest court, but voters. I'm wondering what you say. I'm going to tell you my take. I think it benefits Democrats more because the pro-lifers, or those who are Republican evangelicals who are pro-life, they already got their person, they already got their girl, and they already got her seated. Whereas people outraged about that and the hypocrisy between what happened to what happened with Merrick Garland and what happened with her and the other court vacancies that Republicans wouldn't allow Obama to fill and Trump has. I think it's actually going to get people who are, and the majority of people don't want to overturn Roe v. Wade, very high majority of Americans. The majority of Americans also consider themselves pro-choice. So do you think it's going to energize more of the voters on the left, who would be the pro-choice folks, or on the right, who would be the pro-life folks, to come out and vote for or against the president?
So my biggest fear is that I think Republicans want this seat because they think if they can get it, elections won't matter anymore. The Supreme Court has been chipping away at the Voting Rights Act, which is like the thing that protects us from racist voter discrimination in this country for many years now. They have a case in front of them right now that could potentially completely gut the Voting Rights Act. And, the Republicans are increasingly a white nationalist party. The Democratic Party has a multiracial coalition. And so if you don't have protections ensuring that you can't disenfranchise someone because they're black or brown, I don't know that Democrats can compete at the national level. And so the thing that scares me here isn't that, like, okay, maybe Roe v. Wade is overturned, but it's still fine for pro-choice people because voters rise up and we get, laws protecting abortion. The fear is that it won't matter what the voters think anymore, because if the Supreme Court keeps chipping away at voting rights in the way that it has been, elections start to look rigged.
A very good point. We're going to talk about that more about Ms. Barrett, and we'll be back with our guest. I'm Leslie Marshall. Don't go away.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater.
Okay, sounds great.
If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day that the United Nations established the idea of holding an annual World Food Day. The aim of the day is to bring global attention to the problem of hunger and build international solidarity to fight the problem. The first World Food Day was observed 2 years later. One feature of the day is a teleconference that brings together some of the world's top experts in the field of agriculture, nutrition, and human rights. Each year, a different theme is chosen for the day. For the first 2 years, the theme was simple: food comes first. In 1984, the chosen theme was women in agriculture. Women were again the focus in 1998 with the theme Women Feed the World. In 1986, the day featured fishermen and fishing communities. Small farmers were the theme in 1987, and in 2014, the theme was family farming, feeding the world, caring for the earth. That year, the United Nations declared 2014 International Year of Family Farming. A UN report found that 500 million family farms make up over 98% of farming holdings, and were responsible for at least 56% of agricultural production. In the United States, family farmers produced 84% of all produce.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
We are back. I'm Leslie Marshall, back with our guest, Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox, where he focuses on the Supreme Court, the Constitution, and the decline of liberal democracy here in the U.S. He's author of Injustices, the Supreme Court's History of Comforting the Comfortable and Afflicting the Afflicted. He can be followed on Twitter at @IMillhiser. Ian, thank you for holding. Welcome back.
Sure
We're
thing.
seeing more and more justices, Neil Gorsuch, this woman, Ms. Barrett, who are originalist. And because you covered the Supreme Court, I was wondering if you could just touch upon that for our viewers and listeners who may hear the term but not fully understand what that means and why it's a good or a bad thing for our nation going forward on the heels of what you just said before the break.
Yeah, so originalism is one of those things that if I just tell you the definition of it, it sounds obvious that you should be an originalist. So the definition of originalism is that the Constitution has a fixed meaning and judges are bound by it. And should judges follow the text of the Constitution? Duh. Yes, of course they should. The problem is that the Constitution's really vague. It refers to the privileges or immunities of citizenship, doesn't tell us what those are. It says that there can't be unreasonable searches and seizures, doesn't tell us what's reasonable or unreasonable. It's just a really vague document. And so in practice, what originalism allows judges to do is it's a way of undercutting past precedents that they don't like. And there have been liberal originalists in the past. Justice Hugo Black used originalism to wipe out a bunch of decisions or to attack a bunch of decisions that undermined the government's ability to regulate the workplace. Justice Scalia used originalism to attack decisions like Roe. And, Justice Thomas has gone so far as to say that he wants to bring back decisions saying that child labor laws are unconstitutional. He wants to attack pretty much all of the 20th century through originalism. So originalism is one of those things that, again, it sounds really smart, but it has less content than you'd think it does just from listening to the definition. And in practice, when I hear a judge tell me they're an originalist, I get nervous because in practice, the way that originalism functions is it's a way of saying, hey, like there's these past precedents. Normally I'd have to follow them. But if I wrap myself in the Constitution and the framers, then I can say that I don't have to follow it.
And speaking to that, I mean, when questioned, Amy Coney Barrett did not include Roe v. Wade as a super precedent, where she did, with other things. And that is worrisome. Devil's advocate, I will play for a second, because somebody said to me, I thought it was a fair question, but I'm curious as to your answer. We already had a conservative leaning court with a conservative majority before the notorious RBG left this earth.
Right.
Why is it more of, and Roe v. Wade was not overturned, nor did that come up on the docket, any case that would discuss that. Why is it more worrisome? Yes, this woman is replacing RBG, but she kind of is like a female, younger version of Scalia.
Yeah. So it's true that before she got there were already 5 votes who were pretty opposed to Roe v. Wade. Last June, there was a case, it was called the June medical case. That was an abortion case. And the facts of that case were almost literally identical to another abortion case that the court had decided 5 years ago. And what happened is that 4 justices said, well, we'll just ignore that case. And Chief Justice Roberts wrote an opinion where he said, look, I don't like abortion. I don't like the abortion decisions, but you can't send me the exact same case because, like, if I reach the opposite result in the exact same case, then, like, it's really obvious what we're up to here. So, like, he didn't say this explicitly, but basically the thrust of his opinion was do something different the next time. So, the punchline is Roe v. Wade was probably already doomed. I think that Barrett's confirmation means that doom might come quicker. And I think that you're just going to see that in a lot of areas where Roberts is the sort of guy who, like, was very conservative, but often wanted to move slowly and incrementally and, do so in ways where it wasn't obvious that the court was just engaged in politics. And now that he's no longer the swing vote, it's not clear to me that there's a force within the court to say, like, let's just not do this all at once.
God, there's so much I want to talk to you about. There's this belief, I think, by some evangelicals who are not as educated on this, that if you get rid of Roe v. Wade, that will get rid of abortion. It doesn't. It just gets rid of it. It'll just become legal in certain states. People will flock to California, where I live, and other blue states to get abortions. But it goes back to prior to the 1950s, or prior to 1973,
Yeah.
technically, but harkens back to those days when women were dying in back alleys, who were getting abortions with coat hangers that were, or unsterilized tools by people that were not medical professionals. And that will happen again in red states. And so interesting when you have other countries in the world, even countries that are considered to be Catholic, that are Ireland as an example, right? Or religious, when you look, that they're going completely the opposite way, which is they're now making abortion
Right.
legal throughout the land, and we're seeing that in a number of countries. We have seen that, especially over the past few years. It's quite interesting that the United States would be going backward with progressive legislation like reproductive rights.
Yeah, I mean the underlying problem here. I mean the reason why Republicans are about to have a supermajority on the Supreme Court. So like if you have any listeners who are 31 years old, if you are 31 years old, you have only lived through one presidential election, the 2004 election, where a Republican won the popular vote. There's only been one election in the last 3 decades when a Republican won the popular vote. And yet Republicans have done pretty well during that period because of the Electoral College. The first Supreme Court justice in American history to be nominated by a president who lost the popular vote and confirmed by a block of senators who represent less than half the country was Neil Gorsuch, Trump's first appointee. Second one was Brett Kavanaugh, and the third's probably going to be Amy Coney Barrett. So, like, the problem here is that we have a constitutional system that effectively gives extra votes to white conservatives. And, I look at the polls, and like what the polls tell me is that the idea that abortion should be illegal is a minority view in this country, just like it's a minority view in Canada and Ireland and, lots of other democracies. But because our elections are no longer producing democratic results, this minority is able to have an outsized amount of influence. And, ultimately what that means is that if Democrats have a really great year in this election, they need to be thinking about big democratic reforms, admitting new states, and putting in place a big bold voting rights act, potentially adding additional seats to the Supreme Court so that people
That was
like,
my next my next question. I mean, the Constitution is clear; it doesn't give a number of seats. Is it, we have 30 seconds. We have to have you back. Can we have you back to talk about Fort Pack and other stuff?
Send me an email. We'll find a time.
I would love it. Ian, thank you for joining us. Once again, our guest has been Ian Millhiser. He is author of Injustices, the Supreme Court's History of Comforting the Comfortable and Afflicting the Afflicted. He's a senior correspondent at Vox, and on Twitter, follow him there at iMillhiser. Thank you, Ian. Back after this, folks.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious. It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working. Who, me? Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey. Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
How nasty is the Republican Party's massive campaign to thwart democracy? Ask the good people of Florida. This was one of only 3 states that permanently took away the voting rights of felons who had completed their punishment. In 2018, though, a whopping 65% of Floridians voted for a state constitutional amendment that finally struck this malicious bit of legal ugliness from the books, thus restoring the political personhood of about 1 million people who had served their time. But, led by Ron DeSantis, Florida's right-wing goose of a governor, the GOP demanded that an appeals court of hyper-partisan federal judges overrule 2018's landmark vote by the people and slam the door once more on the rights of discharged felons. They're not entitled to vote, squawked these vindictive ballot suppressors, unless and until they've paid off the full amount of court costs and fees they were assessed. Money, asserted Republican leaders, must trump social justice, human decency, and political rights for those mostly indigent people who are unable to pony up $1,000 or so to vote. Even if ex-felons are regularly making payments to clear the debt, tough luck, say the Republican repressors, no vote until every penny is paid. It's a flagrant case of rigging the system to steal the votes of a low-income constituency generally inclined to support Democratic policies and candidates. It also amounts to an unconstitutional poll tax, made more intolerable by applying it to one class of citizens, largely people of color, specifically to disenfranchise them. This is Jim Hightower saying the court's 6-judge Republican majority, 5 appointed by Trump, cynically defied the U.S. Constitution and the Florida electorate. Yet, the people's battle for justice goes on. To stay connected, go to FloridaRRC.com.
We are back, second guest in the second half of this hour. Hi, I'm Leslie Marshall. Thank you for listening on radio, on stream, on podcast, and watching on Periscope, on Twitter, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and every other way that you get us. Good to have you with us. And it's good to have this next guest with us. Her name is Christine Pelosi. Yes, you know that name. You know our House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and this is her daughter. But this is a woman who's very successful in her own right, in addition to being the Speaker's daughter. She's an attorney, an author. She's an advocate. She has served as a public interest lawyer in San Francisco and in Washington, D.C. She's chair of the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus and a member of the Democratic National Committee, where she co-founded the DNC Veterans and Military Families Council. She's also a vice chair. She's published 3 books, traveled to 41 states and 4 foreign countries conducting call to service leadership boot camps. She lives in San Francisco, where I used to live. My husband did his residency there, great city. With her husband, she's Emmy-nominated Emmy-nominated filmmaker. Peter Kaufman is her husband, and she has a lovely daughter, Isabella. Actually, a name I was going to name my daughter. I'll tell you a quick, cute story about that, Christine. Of course, we know her. And we love her mom as well, the great House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Please follow Christine on Twitter at SF Pelosi. Christine, first of all, I follow you on Twitter and I love your tweets. And may I just say, as somebody who has a Sicilian mother, you are a badass, and so is your mother. And I love tough Italian badass broads. So I just love you. I love your mother. I love your tweets, and so honored that you're taking the time to be on the show today. Thank you.
Well, you're so kind, and I love, one badass Italian woman to another. As we all know, tweet at your own risk. But it's Twitter. You got to put yourself out there, and some things people will like, some things they won't like. that's the way it is these days. But I do think it's important for us to continue to get our message out as much as possible. I used to do all Facebook and like hardly any Twitter, and then I switched about 8 years ago. It was funny because I just realized I'm going to be saying a lot more than people are ever going to want to see, and they could just mute me on Twitter. But Facebook, it's a different deal. And of course, ever since they lied about my mom and put up all those fake, deep fake videos and all that, I mean, it's such a joke because the woman doesn't even drink alcohol. And, and yet I'm seeing all of these, pictures of her supposedly intoxicated. So I completely switched my social. And I think that it's important, whatever platform we're on, that we all realize that we are, on the one hand, popping off because it's social media, but on the other hand, it is like a tattoo and it does stay with you. So I try to balance entertainment with some, believe it or not, some degree of self-censorship.
Well, somebody who should self-censor a lot more is our president, Donald Trump. And I want to get to some of the things that happened in the town hall last night, just so people know, in case they haven't watched. ABC, where Joe Biden had his town hall, had higher ratings and more people watching than NBC, MSNBC, and CNBC combined, where Donald Trump's town hall was broadcast. Last night, one of the things I don't get why, well, maybe because the Republicans are enjoying the infiltration in their party, but the president refused to denounce QAnon at the NBC town hall last night. Take a listen, and then I would love you to respond.
While we're denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and that disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep state. Republican Senator Ben Sass said, quote, QAnon is nuts, and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories.
He may be
Why
right.
not just say it's crazy and not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Christine, any comment? Because, one thing that, with your mom and her career that you've been exposed to is, politicians and how they answer a tough question. But I think it's pretty easy for a politician to say, I want nothing to do with a right-wing conspiracy organization that touts lies, especially when you're talking about such a subject matter.
Well, let me just say this as a former child sex assault prosecutor and a 26-year advocate for victims of sexual violence and domestic violence. I do know who QAnon is. I do think that they are taking people's very good faith concerns about what's happening to children, the exposure and dangers for children online, and turning that into a partisan conspiracy theory. And that's, the dangerous part. On the one hand, for the president to say they're fighting pedophilia, and on the other hand to say, I don't know them. Well, you know something because you just described them. I do think that what he should say is, look, I think that these theories are bunk. They shouldn't talk about that, and they should stick to the facts. We want everybody sticking to the facts. That's what he should do, but he's not doing that. And so my concern is, as one who is an advocate in this area, have been my whole adult life, I feel as though really that's where you want a president, you want a national leader to have that microphone. And this is going to be important because there are QAnon nominees for the Congress of the United States. These people could be sworn in and making national decisions come November. It's quite likely. And so that's why I think it's important to say, let's have some boundaries here. Let's have some factual-based boundaries here and not subscribe to, these unfounded, really horrific rumors that are very dangerous, and that, by the way, undercut the work of people like me and people in law enforcement who are trying to stop pedophiles and people who prey on children online.
Speaking of conspiracy theories, last night at that same town hall, the president not only talked about, but he doubled down and defended on retweeting a baseless conspiracy theory that Vice President Joe Biden had SEAL Team 6 killed as part of a bin Laden cover-up. Even the man who did kill bin Laden said, this is bumpkiss. Take a listen, and then I'd love your response.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up the fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie like that to your followers? You retweeted
That was a retweet. That was an opinion of somebody, and that was a retweet. I'll put it out there. People can decide for themselves.
You're
I don't
the
take a
president.
position.
You're not like someone's crazy uncle who can just retweet whatever.
Christine?
Well, we're going to give Mary Trump the word on that. She said, actually, ... he is someone's, uncle. He's hers, and obviously he's doing this for attention. He's doing this because he's constantly in a race to erase all things Obama, and this is just one more example of his supreme jealousy of Barack Obama. That's really taken a sinister turn, and frankly undermines the support he is trying to win back from military families still upset that he called them suckers and losers, and then blamed Gold Star families for giving him corona.
Very true. Very true. We have a couple of minutes before break. I want you to listen to this, and we'll take the break, and you can respond on the other side of it. Does that sound fair?
Fair.
Okay. This is a clip of Donald Trump at that NBC town hall, trying to make it seem that owing more than $400 million is a totally normal thing. Take a listen, and we'll take a break and then get your response on the other side, Christine. Thank you. But this is Trump trying to make that claim. Most of us scratching our heads on that one as well.
Personally guaranteed, and that will come due in the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe $421 million
First of all,
to?
let me answer. What they did is illegal, number one. Also, $400 million compared to the assets that I have, all of these great properties all over the world, and frankly, the Bank of America building in San Francisco. I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
One of the biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like
you'll
yes.
see that soon.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity.
Not that I know of.
Here's the thing: you could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself. I mean, that's what I understand. I think people are just wondering.
As you know,
you're
I'm
the
under
only.
audit. It turned out that I am
Yes,
under audit.
but the
They
IRS
actually.
says
Excuse
you are.
me. No, but you.
The IRS says that doesn't stop you from releasing.
We will be right back. Don't go away.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council. America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around, And every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage.
The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at storycorpsconnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share.
Welcome to Code WAC, your podcast on America's broken healthcare system and how Medicare for All could help. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. Today, we'll talk about one immigrant's experience battling the coronavirus. Angelica Salas is the longtime executive director of CHIRLA, which she transformed into a mass membership immigrant-led organization, empowering immigrants to win local, state, and national policies that advance their human, civil, and labor rights. Welcome to Code WAC, Angelica. Do you have a story you can share with us about a Latinx immigrant who has suffered during the coronavirus pandemic?
Guillermo was such an active member of CHIRLA. He was one of those members who've been fighting for immigration reform, for licenses so undocumented immigrants could drive. He was always in our protest, making sure that the immigrant voice was lifted up. And he and his wife became extremely active in our fight for immigrant justice. It was just so sad to see him pass away too. He was a construction worker who picked up the virus at the construction site. It was the workers who actually let him know that another worker had also tested positive but was also very ill in the hospital. He had been in very close contact with this worker, and he had obviously pre-existing conditions too. He had been sick before. He didn't have access to health care. And so what happened is he very quickly had to be intubated, and he passed away. He died undocumented. Immigration reform never came. Access to health care never came. And so it's time that we actually help these families.
Find more Code WAC episodes on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. You can also listen to Code WAC at heal-ca.org. This podcast is powered by Heal California, uplifting the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. I'm Brenda Gazar.
That's the boss, Bruce Springsteen, who said if Donald Trump wins re-election, he's moving to Australia, and he wrote that song for the DNC and for Joe Biden, the Biden-Harris ticket and campaign. We are back with our guest and glad to have her with us today. Kindly pulled over to be on the program. Christine Pelosi, attorney, author, and advocate. As I said, she has served as a public interest lawyer in San Francisco and Washington, D.C., chair of the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus, a member of the Democratic National Committee, and she co-founded the DNC Veterans and Military Families Council, where she is a vice chair. Follow her on Twitter at SF Pelosi. Good to have you holding. Thank you for coming back, Christine. Before the break, I played a clip of Trump at the NBC town hall trying to make it seem like owing more than $400 million is totally a normal thing. Huge disconnect when you have so many Americans out of work, so many people who are struggling, and people struggling, not just not having jobs, but people struggling with this pandemic, with day-to-day life and losing loved ones from this virus.
Well, that's really true, Leslie, and it's so unfortunate that the president didn't even bother doing debate prep. Look what happened to Chris Christie the last time he did, but, hospitalized with coronavirus. But the fact is he should have done some prep work on this. I think that what we're seeing over and over again, and what we're hearing is a president to whom people cannot say no. They can't say no for long. When they do, they start doing that John Kelly face plant around him when he's talking in public, and then they're out of the loop. The fact of the matter is, we know that Donald Trump owes $421 million to Deutsche Bank. That's not at issue. What at issue is, who put in a good word for him to get that loan, and how does he intend to pay it back when it comes due next year? Those are the two questions that we have. And if $400 million loan is only a fraction of his net worth, then he should have said, and I'm paying it off, because who wants to carry debt? Most of us don't even like drowning in credit card debt. Now you want to tell me that having $421 million in debt is not something that weighs on you, is not something that would subject you to a national security risk of being bribed? What if somebody says, hey, we'll take care of that debt for you, just sell our countries, some nuclear secrets or some nuclear arms, or look the other way when we butcher a journalist with a bone saw, or whatever the offer might happen to be. That is the reason that people in national security, and I say this as someone who has a degree in foreign service from Georgetown University, served in the Clinton Gore administration, as you mentioned, co-founded the DNC Veterans and Military Families Council, have worked in advocacy with people in national security for years. And the fact of the matter is, some people don't get vetted for government jobs if they carry a great degree of debt. And with all of us as a country looking at the issues of crippling student loan debt and credit card debt and looking for ways to bring that down in order to free people to be able to serve their communities or serve in government, no one with $400,000 in debt would get a government job, much less $400 million.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, let's switch over to the other guy, the Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden. He has been accused by Trump and Republicans of wanting to increase taxes on the middle class. And actually, he spoke on ABC at the town hall last night about quite the opposite. Here's Joe Biden detailing his plan for middle class tax cuts at that ABC town hall. This one's a little bit longer, so take a deep breath and we'll listen. And then I would love to get your take on the other side of this as well, Christine. Former Vice President Joe Biden detailing his plan for the middle class tax cut.
Trump tax cuts, about $1.3 trillion of the $2 trillion in his tax cuts went to the top 1/10 of 1%. That's what I'm talking about eliminating, not all the tax cuts that are out there. And by the way, if you just take a look, we reduced the corporate tax rate from 35%, and Democrats and Republicans who were in office thought it should come down to 28%. He reduced it to 21%. You have 91 out of the Fortune 500 companies not paying a single solitary penny. If you raise the corporate tax just back to 28%, which is a fair tax, you'd raise $1.3 trillion by that one act. If you made sure the people making over 400 grand paid what they did in the Bush administration, 39.6%, you would raise another $92 billion. So you can raise a lot of money to be able to invest in things that can make your life easier, make you change your standard of living by making sure you have affordable health care, by making sure you're in a situation where you're able to send your kid to school, and if you have a student debt, you can deal with it, making sure that your home, you can pay your mortgage. You got 20 million people right now.
Mr. Vice President, let me press you on that, though.
Sure.
You're going to raise the corporate tax, you're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Is it wise to do even that when the economy is as weak as it is right now? Another 900,000 people.
That's a great question. Moody's did a detailed analysis of my tax plan and my economic plan. They said, I will in 4 years, Moody's, Wall Street, said I will create 18.6 million new jobs, good paying jobs, number one. Number two, and I'll increase, the GDP will grow by $1 trillion more than it would under Trump, and 7 million more jobs than under Trump. And the reason is when you allow people to get back in the game and have a job, everything moves. Everything moves. Right now, you got the opposite. You had last year, during this pandemic, you had the wealthiest billionaires in the nation. They made another $700 billion. $700 billion. He talks about a V-shaped recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. If you're on the top, you're going to do very well. And if you're at the bottom, or you're in the middle or the bottom, your income is coming down. You're not getting a raise. The reason why I'm so optimistic about economic recovery, more than I've ever been, is we have these 4 crises happening all at once, and one helps the other. For example, we're going to invest a great deal of that money into infrastructure and into a green infrastructure. We're going to put 500,000 charging stations on new highways we're building and old highways we're building, made in America. If you actually insist that, whatever that product is, made in America, including the material that goes into the product, it's estimated we're going to create somewhere between another 4 and 6 million jobs just by doing that.
And just by doing that, when you have Moody's and you have Goldman Sachs who are saying that your plan is better, I scratch my head as a voter when you look at what is most important to voters, Christine. And the economy is number one, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, or don't want to be affiliated with any political organization. I'm surprised the country is still so split between these two candidates when just on that issue alone, Joe Biden's plan to help the middle class and to help this nation economically has been touted by Wall Street as better for individuals, families, and this nation. Would love your take. Christine?
Well, that's the challenge for Joe Biden, isn't it? In the next 440 hours that we have left to cast our ballots in this election is to get his economic message out to people and to turn down the noise of Donald Trump's chaos theories. You know, I tried a fair number of cases in the San Francisco court system, and, you know, it was always the same thing. You know, when we had a strong case, the other side would always want to talk about anything but our case, right? And do the courtroom antics or get us, you know, throw us off our message and have us talking about other things. Donald Trump wants us talking about him. He wants us using his language and his framing of the issues and his concerns. The media is conditioned to have a horse race, so they'll both sides everything. And therefore, it is incumbent upon the challenger, to the president to say to people, not only should he be hired, Joe Biden be hired, but also this is why it's better for you and your family. And to keep going back to that palm card that he has in his pocket that says, here's my deal for you. Because if Joe Biden is talking about the economy, if Joe Biden is talking about healing the health and the soul of our nation, he will win. If he is responding to Donald Trump for the next 444 hours, then he may not win, because we are a country that is divided along in 3 fissures. One is Democrats and Republicans in terms of who voted last time, and then there are those non-voters who I consider to be the swing voters. And if you are swinging between staying home and coming out to vote, then it's the job of the Democrats, it's the job of Joe Biden and of all of us to get out there and say, here's how your life can get better under a Biden-Harris administration. And if you're Donald Trump, you want those people staying home, so you want to make it so ugly and so awful and so chaotic that people will throw up their hands and say, why bother? So let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about the health of our people, of our justice system, of our planet, and of our economy in the next 444 hours. And then we will win.
Absolutely. I hope we do. Christine, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy. Just like I said, I love your tweets. I enjoy them very much. Enjoy all the work that you do. Thank you. And thank your mother. It's so wonderful watching a strong woman in action. I love it for me, and I love it for my daughter in the future. Christine Pelosi, attorney, author, and advocate, served as a public interest lawyer in San Francisco and D.C., chair of the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus, and a member of the Democratic National Committee. Like I said, she published 3 books, traveled to 41 states, 4 foreign countries, conducting call to service leadership boot camps, and it's been a pleasure to have her on. Please follow her on Twitter. On Twitter, she is at SF Pelosi. I'm Leslie Marshall, and I hope everyone has enjoyed our 2 guests today, and that you have a wonderful and safe weekend. Wear your masks, social distance, and